Chapter 12. What's she doing here? Buddy asked, as he shifted his weight and stared at the tractor. Did she come to pick you up? But what he really wondered was if something bad had happened. They hadn't talked about all their relatives, cousins, aunts, uncles, and the like. But he was worried now that there was bad news. No one seemed to just show up unless there was bad news to throw around. I didn't tell her I was coming here, she said quietly. You didn't? She bit her lip. I knew she wouldn't let me come, and I wanted to see you. You're my friend, buddy. How can I go for weeks at a time without seeing my friend? He turned to her and wanted to pull her into his arms. He wanted to cuddle her close and rub a hand down the side of her face. But he wouldn't. That wouldn't be right. Not now. You can't. I don't want to. Me either. We've got to have a plan then. They talked it over and decided to tell her mother it was an impulsive picnic, and the two of them went down to the pond. They took the dog because he liked to swim. They ate lunch. Now they were back. Do you think she's worried about you? He asked. Jenna nodded. Then tell her you didn't mean to worry her. She nodded again. It's going to be okay. You promise? He started to open his mouth and vow to her that everything was going to be okay. But how could he know that for certain? He wanted it to be okay. He wanted her mother to accept him and see him for the person he was, and not the child he had been, or whatever else his mother had been telling Charlotte since she had been there. Maybe they just came for a visit. I don't think so, Jenna said. Do you think we're in trouble? We shouldn't be. And that was the truth. They hadn't done one thing wrong. And there was nothing wrong with that. He slid his fingers down the length of her arm and held his hand to hers for a moment. Then he squeezed gently and let go. Come on. He motioned her forward. Let's see what this is all about. He wanted to keep that contact with her. Hold hands all the way to the house. He loved holding her hand. Her hands were so soft compared to his. He knew He knew she worked hard, but a woman's work didn't build up calluses and and other tough spot and other tough spots on the palm. And he had plenty of those. Holding Jenna's hand was like holding a piece of silk, but he couldn't do that with everyone watching. He knew they were watching. He felt them watching like he was on display somewhere. About a town that somewhere. He had seen a movie on his Rumspringa about a town that eventually found out they were part of a model town of a giant or something like that. They knew he was up there watching them. That's how Buddy felt, small, exposed, and watched. Jenna didn't speak. She just walked along, hand across her torso, as if she was protecting herself. She had placed her hand on the opposite shoulder, while the other arm was wrapped around her middle. Maybe she was trying to conceal the wet splotches on her dress. She might succeed in that, but there was no hiding the wilting prayer covering. Normally it stood out a bit from the back of the head, forming a perfect circle with a small hole and a bow at the bottom. But hers looked like ice cream melting in the sun. All the shape had gone out of it. A covering was important, near sacred to the girls. He had seen where she had put hers when they were in the water. She had hung it carefully in the branches of the nearest tree. They had talked about their clothes, but they had never talked about wet hair and what it would do to her prayer cap. And he didn't say anything now. They were halfway to the house when the door opened. His mom and dad, her mom and mommy, Prudy and Jonathan, all filed out onto the porch. They watched silently as Buddy and Jenna approached. PJ made it to their yards before them. He bounded up on the porch and braced his legs on the nearest person. That just happened to be his father. When PJ got no attention, he wound through their legs until he found someone who would. When they got to When they got to the steps, they stopped for a moment. No one moved. Jonathan, Prudy, Dad started. Get this dog and take him to the barn. Make sure he has food and water. Yeah, Dad, Jonathan said. I want you to stay there until someone comes and gets you. Dad, Prudy whined. I want to stay. Is Buddy in trouble? I want to hear what he did. What did he do? Jonathan, Dad said. Only the one word, but his brother knew what it meant. Come on, Prudy. Let's go to the barn. But she turned and looked back as Jonathan led her off the porch and toward the barn. He whistled over his shoulder for the dog. PJ bounded after them. I think it's time we all sit down and talk, Dad said, and he led the way back into the house. The women followed behind him. Once they were in the house, Jenna climbed the steps and let herself in. Buddy followed. He could tell everyone was mad, but he didn't know why. He didn't know why he was in trouble. He hadn't done anything wrong, and in his opinion, neither had Jenna. Sit down, Dad motioned. Dad motioned to the dining room table. Coffee cups were already sitting in front of 4 of the places. It seemed the two families had been talking a while, but he had no way of knowing how long. Buddy slid into the seat that wasn't his normal. It felt odd to sit to where Aaron usually sat. He didn't feel like Aaron, just Buddy. Just Buddy in Aaron's chair. Jenna slid in across from him. Prudy's seat. I know you're mad. I know you're mad. Her head was down. He couldn't see her face, just the wilted back of her covering. She had her hands in her lap, and if he was figuring right, she was picking at her nails. Mad? Mad? Her mother let go of a short bark of laughter. Not quite laughter, but Buddy didn't know what else to call it. And I'm sorry, Jenna continued without looking up. Mad? Her mother said again. This time she didn't laugh. You take the buggy and leave with no note and no clue as to where you might have gone. And you think I'm mad? Buddy started to ask how she found her, if she had no clue as to where she had gone. But he didn't. Somehow he figured that Jenna's mom wouldn't appreciate the question. I just wanted to see Buddy. Why are you wet? Charlotte asked. Your hair, your... She waved a hand in Jenna's general direction. Your underclothes. By now, Jenna's makeshift swimsuit had blood water all over her dress. She had a huge patch on her chest that looked like a sideways number 8. He had seen the splotch on the back when they were coming to the house. It looked like an H, sort of, and the circle just below her hips that went all the way around. Buddy taught me how to swim. He what? Charlotte's words were more like a screech. She jumped to her feet. Her chair slid out behind her with a screech of its own. Okay, Dad said, finally joining in the conversation. Let's all just calm down. Charlotte propped her hands on her hips and turned her attention to his dad. I will not. Your son put my daughter in danger. He did no such thing. He did no such thing. His mom was on her feet in the very next instant. Jenna still sat in her seat, picking her nails under the table, if that was really what she was doing. Her mom was strangely quiet. Ladies, Dad said, this is getting us nowhere. Charlotte's face turned a very bright, very unnatural shade of red, and Buddy wondered for a moment if she was having a heart attack. One of the ministers had one a while back, while he was preaching. Everyone said that was the best way to everyone said that was the best way to pass on. While he was preaching God's word. Anyway, he had been that same color right before he fell to his knees mid-sentence. I cannot have this, she said. You need to keep your boy away from my daughter. Buddy is not to blame here. His mom's face was turning red as well, but she tended to do that when she was mad or hot, or she had been out in the sun too long. He didn't think she was going to have a heart attack. Plus, she didn't seem nearly as mad as Charlotte. Close, but not there. Your daughter is trying to lead my son astray. Gertie, Dad started. Lead him astray? Charlotte's voice was low now, almost too quiet. Did you say she was trying to lead him astray? Ladies, Dad said once again, let's not say anything that we might regret. They both started talking at the same time. Buddy couldn't hear all of what they were saying, but he did catch a few words and phrases here and there. Danger to himself, unacceptable, delicate, and has to stop were among them. Jenna kept her head down the entire time. Her mommy continued to sit quietly. Then Dad slammed his hands down on the table between them. Enough, he roared. The two moms leaned back and fell silent. The room was almost too quiet now. Buddy could even hear their breathing, and he could hear the tiny little sobs escaping Jenna with every little breath. "You're upsetting Jenna," he said in the thick quiet. All eyes turned to him, all but Jenna's. We didn't mean any harm. We just wanted to go on a picnic," Buddy continued. He looked over at Charlotte. "I went to your house every day for a week and asked, but you kept saying no. Jenna Gale doesn't need to date. She's too young. She's not ready." Why don't I get a say in that? Jenna's voice was small, but it stopped everyone. Jenna Gale, my dearest, you don't know what's good for you. She rose to her feet. He's supposed to be even with the others. I do know what's good for me. Buddy, he's good for me. He couldn't stop the surge of pride at her words. He felt as if his shirt buttons might pop off. His chest was puffed out so big. He was good for her. He loved that, and he felt the same. You have made every decision for me since the accident, maybe even before, but I'm an adult now. I can make decisions for myself. You don't know what you're saying, my love," Charlotte said. But Jenna's confidence seemed to come out right before his eyes. "I do. Buddy is my friend, my only friend, and I want to spend time with him." She sat back down once she had said her piece. "No," her mom said. "He put you in danger." I know my buddy, and he would never force her to do anything she didn't want to do. I asked Jenna about the water," Buddy finally said. He wouldn't hurt Jenna for anything in the world. Why couldn't they see that? Her mother turned to him. "Just proof that Jenna is not capable of making decisions for herself. She has not been in the water since the accident, and she won't go again." What if I want to go?" Jenna asked. "See?" Charlotte looked at each of them in turn. Unable to make good decisions on her own, she turned to Mom. She turned to Mom. "That is why I beg you, keep your son away from my daughter." His mom opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came out. It was perhaps the first time he had seen his mother without words. "We're very sorry," Dad said. Charlotte nodded, a stubborn jerk of her chin. It said, "Okay, but not okay." He had seen that look before. Jenna's grandmother stood. "Come, Jenna." Obediently, she rose to her feet. Once again, her head was down. Buddy wanted to scream, "No," and grab her arm, haul her close, and not let them take her away. "We're friends," Buddy said. "She's my friend." If you really are her friend, you'll stay away from her," Charlotte said. Then she led Jenna from the room. Her mommy followed behind, and his dad behind her. His mom said nothing as she stood there and waited for his father to return. "I think we should talk," Dad said when he came back in. Mom nodded. "I don't want to talk." He wanted to go upstairs and fall down on his bed and cry. Once he got that out of his system, he would figure out a way to see Jenna, because right now, finding times when they could be together looked bad. Sunday after church, that was it. Once every 2 weeks. He thought he might die if he had to wait that long to see her. He stood intent on doing just that, going to his room and crying his eyes out alone. "Sit down, Buddy," his mother's tone said. She was in no mood for an argument, but Buddy was. He had just lost the only friend he had ever had, and he wasn't going to take it lightly. "I'm going to my room," he said, but he crossed his arms and dared her to dispute what he was saying. "Sit down, Buddy." This time his dad spoke. Reluctantly, Buddy sank into the chair. He wasn't up for a whooping tonight. He'd only get one of those in his life. He'd only got one of those in his life. When he was 10, he'd left the paddock gate open on church Sunday, and everyone's horse got out. It took most of the afternoon to track them all down and get them back to the house so their owners could go home. And all on the Lord's Day, Dad had not been happy. "Did you take this girl to the pond?" Dad asked. Buddy nodded. "We just wanted to have a picnic." He did his best to explain, but there were times when he wasn't good with the words. "We were supposed to have a picnic that Sunday. Then then rain and games, and we've never got to go. His mother turned her head from side to side, as if his words were hanging in the air for her to read. Right there in the open. All of this was about a picnic? I like Jenna, Buddy said. It was one thing he could say with confidence. You like her? Dad said. He gave a quick look to Mom. Buddy nodded. Jenna is nice and sweet. She doesn't make fun of me or say I look weird. Who said you looked weird? Mom was on her feet in an instant. Sit down, Gert. His mother hesitated, but only for a moment. But she no sooner got her bottom in the seat before Dad shook his head. You know what? I think it's time Buddy and I had a talk. Why don't you go check on Prudy and Jonathan? I know where babies come from, Buddy said. He didn't want to talk. He wanted to be alone, but it seemed his father had other plans. Gertie? Dad said. His mother stood and looked at Buddy. Yeah, sure. And the next thing he knew, his mother was headed out the front door. You like Jenna, Dad said once she was gone. It wasn't really a question. Buddy nodded. She's the prettiest girl I have ever seen. Dad tapped his fingers on the table in front of him. Yes, I would say she is a very pretty girl. Then Dad leaned back. And you know where babies come from? Yeah. How do you know this? Dad asked. Buddy scratched his head. He wasn't nearly as wet as Jenna had been, and his hair was almost dry, as was the rest of him. It helped that he had left his t-shirt down at the pond, and now only his trousers were damp from his wet undershorts. There was a chapter in the 8th grade science book. What? Dad's eyebrows rose so high, Buddy thought they might collide with his hair. We weren't supposed to read it, he said, going back to what he probably should have said first. The teacher had it all clipped together, but he had gone to the public school instead of the Amish one. His dad didn't say anything. Dad? Buddy ventured. I think it's time for a new science textbook. Buddy nodded. He had no idea, but he wasn't going to dispute his dad over school matters. Dad knew what needed to be done. You and Jenna, Dad started. It took him a minute to figure out what his dad was asking him without really asking him, but he shook his head. I like her. I might even love her. Saying the words made his heart feel free, but I want to um, marry her before. He shook his head. He wasn't sure about all the things he had learned from the textbook, but he knew he wanted to spend the rest of his life with Jenna. To spend the rest of his life with Jennifer Abigail Burkhart. Was that love? Maybe. You want to marry her? Dad started. And if you do, where are you going to live? I haven't figured that out yet. What are you going to do for money? Buddy shifted in his seat. I don't know. You don't have a job, Dad said. No, Buddy agreed. And there's not a place here for you and a bride. Jonah stayed with us. Jonah has a house of his own now. That much was true, and he came back to help us help and he came back to help his dad with some of the bigger chores. But he had started to work in town at the hardware store. Jonah had always been good at fixing things. Now he helped other people learn how to. You're not prepared for a wife or a family, Buddy. Dad's voice was gentle, not accusing, but to Buddy, it stung like a knife through his heart. You might not ever be. So before you go around telling girls that you love them, you better think long and hard about what comes next. Buddy nodded. It wasn't like he could argue with his dad over this matter. But he had a lump in his throat that felt like a wad of cotton. He couldn't tell Jenna he loved her until he could find a way to provide for them both.